The morning suns of New Hope Colony cast a golden glow over the Neo-Dog settlement, highlighting both our progress and the work still ahead. From my office window, I could see the Academy's foundation taking shape, surrounded by the homes and facilities we'd built over the past 18 months. The construction teams estimate another 3 months for the Academy's main building, I reported to Harrison's hologram. Training facilities are already operational. Harrison nodded, looking as tired but determined as ever. Even after 18 months in office, he hadn't lost his drive. And the community integration? Better than we could have hoped, I replied. The local humans have been exceptional. They've treated us like neighbors, not experiments or tools. That's why we chose New Hope, Harrison smiled. They showed the highest support for Neo-Dog rights during the election. Speaking of support, I hear you're getting a new colonial liaison? I nodded, trying to keep my expression neutral. Beth Walker. Her record with colonial security is impressive. I've read her file. Harrison's eyes twinkled with something that made me suspicious. She was instrumental in catching election fraud attempts in 3 different colonies, very dedicated to the cause. Before I could respond, Whiskers burst into my office, his whiskers twitching with excitement. Rex, the liaison shuttle just entered atmosphere, and you'll never guess who's with her. A familiar scent reached my nose moments before Nova appeared behind Whiskers. Surprise, old friend! Nova! I moved to greet her, genuinely pleased. Didn't think we'd see you until the Academy's opening. Harrison asked me to evaluate the security integration, she said, then grinned. And maybe help the new liaison settle in. I caught something in her tone that made my ears perk up. Why do I feel like I'm being set up? Because you work too hard, Nova replied bluntly. 18 months building this place, and what do you do for fun? Write training manuals? Harrison's hologram chuckled. She has a point, Rex. A community needs more than just infrastructure. It needs heart. Before I could protest that I had plenty of heart, it was just focused on duty, Fang's voice boomed through my comm. Liaison shuttle on final approach. You might want to see this landing, Rex. She's flying it herself. Just pulled a combat spiral through atmospheric turbulence. My ears perked up despite myself. A combat spiral was an advanced military maneuver, not something civilian liaisons typically knew. Better go greet our new arrival, Nova said innocently. Too innocently. As Harrison's hologram winked out, was he smirking? I made my way to the landing pad, Nova and Whiskers falling in beside me. The settlement sprawled around us, housing units, community centers, training facilities, all built with a blend of military efficiency and comfortable living in mind. The shuttle touched down with perfect precision, its engines cycling down with practiced efficiency. The hatch opened and I'm not one for love at first sight. Military training and genetic engineering tend to favor rational thought over emotional responses. But something about the Neo-Dog who emerged made my tail wag without conscious input. Beth Walker stood with perfect military posture, her fur a rich brown with intelligent eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. Her colonial security uniform was impeccable, but she moved with a natural grace that no amount of training could instill. Sergeant Rex Wolfborn? She asked, approaching with a professional smile that somehow managed to be warm at the same time. Beth Walker, your new colonial liaison. I've heard a lot about what you're building here. Welcome to New Hope, I managed, suddenly very aware that I'd been up since dawn reviewing construction plans. We're glad to have you. I'm glad to be here, she replied, and something in her voice made me think she meant it. I've followed your work since the election. What you're building here, it's more than just a settlement. It's a future. Nova cleared her throat. Beth, let me show you to your quarters. Rex needs to finish his reports. As they walked away, I caught Beth glancing back once. Our eyes met briefly, and I felt that tail-wagging response again. You know, Whiskers said thoughtfully beside me, statistical analysis suggests that working relationships are more efficient when there's personal compatibility between... Don't start, I growled, but without heat. We have work to do. But as I headed back to my office, I found myself taking a route that offered a view of the visitor quarters. For security purposes, of course. Purely professional interest, really. The Academy's training grounds need to be expanded here, I said, pointing to the holographic display. The first major class arrives in 3 weeks, and we'll need space for advanced tactical exercises, Beth finished, her tail wagging slightly as she manipulated the projection. What if we adjusted the layout like this? It would give you the space you need while leaving room for future expansion. We'd been working together for 2 weeks now, and each day brought new reasons to be impressed. Beth didn't just understand the administrative side of her role, she thought like a tactical commander. That could work, I admitted, trying not to notice how her eyes lit up when she was solving problems. But what about the colonial zoning regulations? She grinned. Already handled. I submitted the paperwork yesterday. The local government is actually eager to help. They see the Academy as an investment in their own security future. Nova, who had been suspiciously present for many of our planning sessions, spoke up from her corner. You two work well together, almost like you can read each other's minds. I caught the hint of suggestion in her voice but chose to ignore it. Beth, however, surprised me by responding. Military mindset, she said, but there was something playful in her tone. Rex and I speak the same language. Duty, efficiency, purpose. Fun, Nova suggested innocently. Beth's tail gave an amused wag. That too. Speaking of which, Rex, have you tried the new recreation center the colonists built? I hear they've included facilities specifically designed for Neodog physical training. Been too busy, I said, focusing on the hologram. The Academy isn't going anywhere, Beth cut in firmly. Come on, Commander Workaholic. Consider it a security inspection if you must. Tomorrow, 800. I looked up, caught off guard by the direct invitation. Nova was suddenly very interested in her datapad, hiding what I'm sure was a smile. Somehow, that set off my alarm. That would be acceptable? For security purposes? Of course, Beth agreed, her eyes twinkling. Purely professional. The next morning found us at the recreation center, which was indeed impressive. The colonists had clearly put thought into accommodating Neodog physiology while maintaining a welcoming atmosphere for both species. Race you through the obstacle course? Beth challenged, stretching in a way that made me very aware of her athletic build. What followed was the most enjoyable security inspection of my career. Beth was fast, agile, and clearly enjoyed showing off her combat training. We raced through obstacles, sparred in the training ring, and finally collapsed by the cooling units, both panting and laughing. You're good, I admitted. Where did you learn that reversal move? Colonial security had some interesting challenges during the election, she said. Had to get creative sometimes. Speaking of which, she hesitated, then continued. I never thanked you properly. For what? For inspiring us. When you and your team stood up against the corruption, protected Harrison, it showed everyone what Neodogs could be, what we should be. Something in her voice made my ears perk up. There was admiration there, yes, but something more personal, too. Before I could respond, the facility's manager, Gaston, approached with refreshments specially designed for Neodog metabolism. On the house, he grinned. It's good to see you taking a break, Commander, and in such good company. I felt my ears getting warm, but Beth just laughed. Had to practically drag him away from his reports, all work and no play. Makes Rex a dull dog? Nova's voice came from behind us, making me jump. How long had she been there? Nothing dull about him, Beth said with a smile that made my tail wag involuntarily. Just needs reminding that building a community means more than just construction plans. The rest of the morning passed too quickly. Beth was easy to talk to, sharing stories from her colonial security days while asking thoughtful questions about the Academy's plans. She understood the importance of what we were building here, not just facilities, but a future for our kind. As we walked back to the settlement center, I found myself seeing it through new eyes. Yes, there was work to be done, but there was also life being lived. Neo-dogs and humans mingling in the markets, pups playing in the parks, couples enjoying the morning suns. Quite a view, isn't it? Beth said softly beside me. A real home, a real future. It's getting there, I agreed. Still lots of work ahead. Always is, she nodded. But maybe the work goes better with some balance. Same time tomorrow? I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt something shift in my carefully ordered world. Same time tomorrow, I agreed. As she walked away, Nova materialized beside me again. Don't say it, I growled. Wasn't going to, she grinned. Just wondering if you'll need the training ring reserved for tomorrow. And maybe the day after. I tried to maintain my dignity as I walked away, but I couldn't quite stop my tail from wagging. There was still work to be done, an academy to build, a community to grow. But maybe, just maybe, there was room for something more, too. Years since groundbreaking, I announced to the gathered community. 1 year of building not just structures, but a true home for our people. The settlement central plaza was packed with neo-dogs and humans alike, celebrating our first anniversary. The academy's main building loomed behind me, nearly complete, while festive decorations brightened the surrounding buildings. From my podium, I caught sight of Beth in the front row, her eyes shining with pride. Over the past month, our training sessions had become daily occurrences, and somehow she'd managed to work her way into every aspect of the settlement's planning. "Looking good up there, Commander," Nova whispered from her position beside me. "But maybe stop staring at our colonial liaison long enough to finish your speech?" I cleared my throat, my ears warming. As we look to the future, I continued, we see not just an academy or a settlement, but a vision of what humans and neo-dogs can accomplish together. The celebration that followed was unlike anything in my military experience. Humans and neo-dogs mingled freely, sharing food, music, and stories. Someone had even created a traditional earth cake modified for neo-dog consumption. "Quite a change from military rations," Beth said, appearing beside me with 2 plates. "Try it." Gaston's daughter made it specially. As we found a quiet corner to enjoy the treats, I couldn't help but marvel at how natural this felt. Beth's presence had somehow become essential to my daily routine, her insights valuable not just professionally, but personally. "Credit for your thoughts?" she asked, her tail brushing against mine in a way that seemed far from accidental. "Just thinking about changes," I admitted. "A year ago, this was all plans and promises. Now it's home," she finished. "And speaking of changes," she hesitated, then forged ahead with characteristic directness. "Are we ever going to talk about this thing between us?" I nearly choked on my cake. That is, what thing?" Her look was both amused and exasperated. "The thing where we spend every morning training, every afternoon reviewing plans, and every evening finding excuses to extend our meetings. The thing that has Nova making up increasingly ridiculous reasons to leave us alone together?" As if on cue, Nova's voice called out from nearby. "Oh my, would you look at the time? I suddenly remember an urgent appointment across the settlement. Very urgent, very far away." Beth's laugh was warm and rich. "Subtle as ever, Nova." I found myself laughing too, some of my carefully maintained composure cracking. "He means well." "They all do," Beth agreed, gesturing to where Whiskers was very obviously pretending not to watch us while manning the refreshment table. "But maybe they have a point." Looking at her in the festive lighting, remembering all the moments we'd shared over the past month, I felt my military discipline wavering. "Beth, my responsibilities here are important," she finished. "So are mine. But maybe, just maybe, we could be more effective in those responsibilities if we stop pretending we're just colleagues." Her directness, her understanding of duty while still reaching for something more, made my heart race. Before I could overthink it, I found myself speaking from that heart. "Would you like to have dinner? Just us. No training, no plans, no—" "Yes," she cut me off with a brilliant smile. "Tomorrow? I know a great place in the human settlement, very private." Tomorrow, I agreed, my tail wagging with a mind of its own. The rest of the celebration passed in a blur of congratulations, speeches, and traditional dances adapted for Neodog participation. But through it all, I kept finding my eyes drawn to Beth, and every time she was already looking back. Later that night, as the final celebrants headed home under New Hope's 3 moons, Nova found me reviewing the day's security footage. "You know," she said casually, "for someone trained in tactical observation, you took an awfully long time to see what was right in front of you." I tried to maintain my dignity. I was evaluating the situation. "For a month?" She smiled. "Well, better late than never. By the way, that restaurant Beth mentioned? Already made your reservation. You're welcome." As she walked away, humming innocently, I looked out over the settlement we'd built. The academy was nearly ready. The community was thriving. Maybe it was time to build something else, too. Something just for me. Tomorrow couldn't come soon enough. The academy's great hall had been transformed. Military precision met joyful celebration as humans and Neodogs gathered for what the local news was calling New Hope's Wedding of the Year. "Stop fidgeting," Nova scolded as she adjusted my formal uniform. "You've faced down corrupt governments and alien threats. Surely you can handle getting married." "Different kind of nervous," I admitted, my tail betraying my anxiety despite my best efforts at control. "Good nervous," she assured me. "I've watched you two fall in love over the past 6 months." "This is right." The ceremony we'd planned blended military tradition with newly created Neodog customs. Harrison himself had insisted on attending via hologram, while the settlement's entire population seemed to have turned out in person. When Beth appeared at the hall's entrance, my heart nearly stopped. She wore a modified dress uniform that somehow managed to be both military proper and stunningly elegant. Our eyes met across the room and suddenly all my nervousness vanished. This was right. This was perfect. The ceremony itself passed in a blur of joy. We exchanged both traditional vows and ones we'd written ourselves, promising to be partners in all things: duty, community, and love. When the colony's chief administrator pronounced us married, the cheers from both humans and Neodogs nearly shook the building. At the reception, Harrison's hologram raised a toast to 2 of our finest, proof that doing one's duty and following one's heart aren't mutually exclusive. Later, as we danced, yes, Neodogs can dance, we'd worked out some interesting adaptations. Beth leaned close to whisper something that made my world spin. "I have some news," she said softly. "I confirmed it yesterday. We're going to have puppies." I nearly missed a step. We're... Her eyes sparkled. "Due in about 2 months. And..." She glanced toward Nova, who was watching us with suspicious attention. "I was thinking about godparents." "Nova," I agreed immediately. "She's going to cry." "Oh, absolutely," Beth laughed. "Want to tell her now?" We made our way to where Nova was pretending not to watch us. Before we could speak, she narrowed her eyes suspiciously. "Why do you two look even more pleased with yourselves than you should on your wedding day?" Beth's tail wagged as she delivered the news. "How do you feel about being a godmother?" Nova's expression went from suspicious to shocked to overjoyed in the span of seconds. Her squeal of delight drew attention from half the reception. "Really? When? How many? Have you thought about names? Do you need help getting the nursery ready? I should start planning the shower." "Breathe, Nova," I laughed, feeling happier than I'd ever thought possible. "We've got time." As word spread through the reception, we were surrounded by well-wishers. The Academy's first class of students, set to graduate next month, were particularly excited. They'd be the first to complete their training and potentially help teach the next generation. Later that night, as the celebration wound down, Beth and I stood on the balcony overlooking our settlement. The Academy's lights glowed warmly, while the homes and community buildings we'd built spread out before us, full of life and promise. "Quite a view," Beth said, leaning against me. "A home, a family, a future. Everything I never knew I wanted," I agreed, nuzzling her gently. until you showed up and rearranged all my carefully laid plans." She laughed. "Admit it, my plans were better." "Always," I conceded. "Think we're ready for puppies?" "We've built an academy, trained the next generation of neo-dog leaders, and helped create a whole new society," she said confidently. "I think we can handle a few puppies." Nova appeared at the balcony door. "A few? The medical scan shows 5. 5 puppies. I'm already planning their training schedules, their play dates." As Beth and I laughed at our friend's enthusiasm, I felt a profound sense of rightness. This was more than I'd ever dreamed possible when we first broke ground here. Not just a settlement or an academy, but a true home, a family, a future filled with love and purpose. The stars shone brightly over New Hope Colony, promising tomorrow would bring new adventures, new challenges, and new joys. I couldn't wait. The Academy's graduation ceremony was scheduled for tomorrow, but right now all my attention was focused on 5 tiny bundles of fur squirming in their nursery. Beth lay curled nearby, tired but radiant, while Nova fussed over her godchildren with unrestrained joy. "They're perfect," Nova declared, carefully adjusting a blanket. "Have you decided on all the names?" Beth and I exchanged glances. We'd chosen names that honored both our military heritage and our hopes for the future. "Liberty," Beth said, touching our firstborn daughter's head gently. "Then Victoria, honor, faith, and hope." Nova grinned. "The next generation of leaders." A chime from my comm unit announced Harrison's daily check-in. His hologram appeared and his face broke into a wide smile at the scene. "They're beautiful," he said warmly. "How's the new mother?" "Ready to get back to work," Beth replied with a tired laugh. "Though Nova might have something to say about that." "Absolutely not," Nova declared firmly. "You're on maternal leave for at least another week, both of you," she added, fixing me with a stern look. I started to protest that tomorrow's graduation ceremony needed me, but Beth's knowing look silenced me. She was right. We'd earned this time together. Through the window, I could see the settlement bustling with life. The Academy's first class would graduate tomorrow, ready to take their places as leaders and protectors across human space. But they weren't just soldiers or security officers. They were the first products of a new way of thinking, a new integration of human and neo-dog society. "You know," Harrison's hologram said thoughtfully, "when we first planned this settlement, I hoped it would become a symbol of what humans and neo-dogs could achieve together. But you've built something even better. A real community, a real home." Beth nodded, nuzzling our daughters. "A place where our children can grow up proud of both their military heritage and their civilian future." Nova, who had somehow produced tiny uniforms for all 5 puppies, for special occasions, looked up from her godmotherly duties. "Speaking of futures, wait until you see what the community's planning for the puppies' naming ceremony next week." The naming ceremony, another new tradition we'd created, blending military precision with family celebration. The entire settlement would gather to welcome its newest members, showcasing how far we'd come from the days when neo-dogs were seen as just enhanced soldiers. Alert from my tablet showed messages pouring in from across human space. Congratulations from other neo-dog communities, from human allies, from the Academy's extended family. We weren't just building a local community anymore. We were part of something much larger. Liberty, our firstborn, opened her eyes and let out a tiny yip that somehow managed to sound commanding. Her sisters stirred in response, and soon the nursery was filled with puppy sounds that made my heart swell with pride. "They're gonna be handful," Beth observed, her tail wagging contentedly. "Good thing they have the best godmother in human space," Nova replied, already making notes on her tablet. "I'm thinking we start basic training around—" "Nova!" Beth and I chorused in mock horror. "Kidding. Mostly." She grinned unrepentantly. "But seriously, it's never too early to start planning their futures. The Academy's junior program." As Nova launched into her plans for our daughter's eventual education, I looked around at my family, Beth, our puppies, our honorary human sister who had become so much more. Through the window, I could see the community we'd built, the academy that would shape the future, and the endless possibilities that lay ahead. Harrison's hologram watched it all with obvious satisfaction. You know, Rex, when I first met you, you were all about duty and service. Now look at you. Husband, father, community leader. Still serving, I said quietly. Just in a different way. Beth's tail wagged in agreement, building a future worth protecting. Liberty yipped again, somehow managing to sound like she was giving orders to her sisters. Nova immediately began taking notes, muttering something about natural leadership qualities. The suns of New Hope Colony painted the room in warm light as my family, both given and chosen, gathered close. Tomorrow would bring the graduation ceremony, next week the naming celebration, and after that, countless new adventures, new challenges, new joys. Looking at my daughters, at my mate, at our friend who had become family, I felt a peace I'd never known possible. We had built something remarkable here, not just structures and systems, but real bonds, real love, real hope. The future was bright, and it belonged to all of us. Together. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to leave it a like and to subscribe if you'd like to see more. Feel free to comment and share it as well. With all that said, go on and check out the video in the top left. I think you might like it.